First, many thanks to you, Janina, to invite me to today's conference and to give me the chance to talk to you about my thoughts and some insights into one of my favorite topics of research, entrepreneurial diversity. My task for today is to provide you some really basic information to prepare the ground for the following discussions during the day. I hope you all will be inspired, and I'm looking forward to fruitful, diverse and manifold discussions with all of you here today at the conference. My challenge is to talk to you as a real diverse audience, including practitioners, researchers and students in the field of entrepreneurship or management or something similar, about diversity as a topic which is itself likewise multifaceted and not easy to put in a nutshell. Nevertheless, I will do my best to give you some general insights into the topic, and I'm sure we will expand our knowledge together during the day. For the ones who visited the Business and Beer event yesterday, it will be some kind of repetition, but I brought you some new insights as well. Researchers from different disciplines, you said it already before, talk about diversity in different ways. And to understand why I am talking about diversity the way I do, it's important to know a bit about my background. And this is a background as a management researcher. I am a business administration researcher, and I did my doctoral thesis in the field of women's entrepreneurship in small and medium-sized enterprises. And therefore, I investigate both individuals and their companies in connection to each other, looking at individual, company-related, and contextual aspects. A gender studies researcher, for example, or a psychologist would talk about entrepreneurial diversity differently and set other hooks or focal points, okay? So, what I am planning to do is to give you at first some insights what entrepreneurial diversity actually means as a kind of an attempt to define the term. Afterwards, I will very briefly present you some facts about entrepreneurial diversity in Germany as an example. And in the third part, we will have a look at the challenges entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in general faces regarding diversity in a digital age. At the end, we will talk about some topics, some open questions and remarks for future research. And due to time constraints, all of this very, very superficially. I hope we can go into more detail during the day and in the following panel discussion. I'm sure all of you have heard the term diversity before. It seems everybody is talking about diversity, and it's always an underlying assumption that diversity is something good, something desirable. But indeed, nearly no one really explains what he or she is talking about when he or she uses the term. And that entrepreneurship research is an international field of research makes it even more complicated, because people from different cultures and different countries have different things in mind when thinking about diversity. Here in Germany, the basic document that addresses diversity is our constitution. You see it here. In Article 3, it is mentioned that all persons should be equal before the law, that men and women shall have equal rights, and that no person shall be favored or disfavored because of sex, parentage, race, language, homeland and origin, faith or religious or political opinions, and that no person shall be disfavored because of disability. These mentioned aspects are nothing else than diversity dimensions that separate people from each other and that can cause discrimination. Our constitution, I think you all know that, is only targeted at the behavior of the state against the citizens. To rule the behavior of people among themselves and of organizations with their employees, we have since 2006 the General Act on Equal Treatment. It says that discrimination is forbidden on the grounds of, you see it here, race, ethnic origin, gender, religion or belief, disability, age or sexual orientation. And what both laws do is to address the most common diversity dimensions around here. In the US, for example, the dimensions veterans is additionally of importance, a dimension never mentioned here, but you have to keep in mind the whole historical development of diversity discourses, as you already said. So in the US, it was started on the civil rights movement. Here in Germany and Europe, it was more based on the fight for women's rights. Something closest to a scientific model of diversity, not yet entrepreneurial diversity, but diversity, are the 4 layers of diversity developed by Gardenswartz and Rowe. Following this model, persons differ in different dimensions on different levels. Every one of us is characterized through demographic dimensions. This is the inner wheel of the circle. These ones, plus religion, are the ones that are addressed in the mentioned laws. I have circled them here for you. Furthermore, there are so-called external dimensions that influence who we are and what we do, but in contrast to the internal dimensions, these can change during our life course and related to our decisions. So we cannot decide not to get older, but we can decide who we marry in our life. In an organizational context, here visible in the outer circle, we have to take other company-related dimensions into account, which cover the status and relations of a person within a specific company. Let's come to entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship research. Entrepreneurship research typically looks at the entrepreneurs themselves, for instance, at their typical or their desirable characteristics, and how these characteristics influence how the entrepreneurs found and manage a business, or in general, entrepreneurial behavior. It looks furthermore at the businesses who are founded and managed by the entrepreneurs and the businesses' characteristics. For instance, which kind of businesses have which chances of success. And additionally, entrepreneurship research investigates the contextual environment, for instance, looking at entrepreneurial ecosystems and their influence. Oftentimes, entrepreneurship research needs to simplify diversity dimensions. And in fact, it is often looking rather at dichotomies than a continuum. I brought you here an article by Welter and colleagues who investigated critically current practices in entrepreneurship research, and they mentioned exemplarily some dichotomies: opportunity versus necessity-based businesses, venture capital-backed versus bootstrapped, formal versus informal businesses, not such a big case here in our country, but in many, many other countries. Man-owned versus women-owned businesses, innovator versus replicator, promoter versus trustee, growth-oriented versus lifestyle, and in general, entrepreneurs versus simple small business owners, or what we call proprietors. Of course, this simplifies if we want to do research about specific groups of entrepreneurs, but the problem is it stigmatizes as well. An underlying assumption can be that the one side is more desirable than the other side. And if we say venture capital backed, that's better than bootstrapped, and to innovate is, I think, better than to replicate. If we then look at the sides, we can conclude, yes, then businesses led by women who are on average need less venture capital and are in branches which do not innovate so much, then they are the worst entrepreneurs. A simplified, but I think very difficult and very wrong underlying assumption. So far, we do not have a theory or a framework in entrepreneurship research that explicitly models entrepreneurial diversity, naming it entrepreneurial diversity. Based on what I explained before, I brought you some own thoughts as a basis for our further discussions today. Maybe we will expand this discussion in the special issue already mentioned by Silke. We are editing it in the EJEV together with Sigrun Brink and Monda Ram, and you can submit your papers until the end of the year, so please keep it in mind. But now, think back at the 4 layers of diversity. As I said, the internal and external dimensions describe who we are, entrepreneurs or not. So I say they can serve as the basic dimensions for describing the entrepreneurial persons, maybe completed by entrepreneurial dimensions like need for achievement, for example, risk awareness, things we oftentimes look at in entrepreneurship research. The organizational dimensions here in the Gardenswartz model can be the enterprise dimensions for entrepreneurship research, including maybe, for instance, beside branch and customer base, all other dimensions relevant for every enterprise, founding relevant dimensions like venture capital needs, and so on. And I think what is still missing in this approach is to say we have to look at the environment as well. It's not only the diversity of entrepreneurs which is of interest, or the diversity of the businesses, it's the diversity within the environment as well. Yeah? Societal influences on meso and macro level. Okay, you can say very nice, but why do we really need to talk about entrepreneurial diversity? Because entrepreneurs are diverse and the categories are not separated from each other, they intersect. Just a very brief gender example. We have 83 million inhabitants in Germany. In 2015, we had about 4 million entrepreneurs. Big number, right? But looking closer at them, you will realize that only about one third of all these entrepreneurs are females. If we are just looking at people who are entrepreneurs in their first professional occupation in full time, the number decreases to only 25% females. If we look at people who are entrepreneurs in their first professional occupation in part-time, nearly 60% of all of them are females. Yeah. Some other numbers. 42.9% of female founders in 2010 had a company in the personal services branch, only 20% of male founders. Only 2.3% of all female founders founded their business in the construction industry, but nearly 10% of male founders. And just looking here at gender, part-time, full-time, and the branches, only 3 out of many, many aspects, we show a variety of differences on individual, business-related, and contextual level. And relationships between those facets are very complicated, multi-layered, and not easy to explain. And this is why we need to talk about diversity, to understand intersectionality between categories and their implications, and to realize that an entrepreneur is not just a theoretical construct. In the real world, real people differ from the, however it is defined, norm of an entrepreneur. In a digital age, in a globalized world, the diversity of entrepreneurs even increases through new technologies, for example, through new forms of work, through innovation and a rapid technological change, through a greater flexibility, for example, according to working times and working spaces, and of course through globalized markets and manifold customer needs, which need businesses that address those needs. And now, just 3 selected concluding remarks. We can talk a whole day about that, but I'm not allowed to. I think time management today is very strict, as Janina told us. First one, entrepreneurial diversity is a challenge. for entrepreneurs if their businesses deviate from the norm in their branch, in their region, whatever, because then they need to prove themselves much more than others need to. It's a challenge for researchers as well, because they need to ask the right questions to get a realistic picture of intersectionality and interlinkages of diversity dimensions in the context of entrepreneurship. It's a challenge for incubators and consultants as well, because they really need to cover the needs of different groups of people. And it's a challenge for politicians, because they want to increase the number of entrepreneurs in our country, and they continue to struggle with the set screws that help fostering different kinds of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. But this is the nicer concluding remark. It's a chance as well. It's a chance for entrepreneurs to differentiate themselves from others, to create a USP that no one else can create. It's a chance for researchers to contribute to theorizing entrepreneurial diversity. It's a chance for incubators to support manifold ideas in manifold branches and to get in touch with totally interesting and inspiring persons. And it's a chance for politicians because being diverse includes the chance to be innovative. And what we need are more innovative entrepreneurs in the digital age. If we want to foster entrepreneurship, this means we need to foster entrepreneurial diversity to make it a chance. And the third concluding remark, both the business and the moral case for diversity are relevant. Accepting entrepreneurial diversity means to value differences between entrepreneurs without stigmatizing or discriminating them. Think back to the two laws I presented at the beginning. This is the moral case. Yeah, we need to act responsible with people. But valuing entrepreneurial diversity means on top to see the potentials of different kinds of entrepreneurs, because all of them contribute to our economy and to our society. And this is the business case. And I think both of them are important when we talk about entrepreneurial diversity. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening.